Change, it's one of the hardest things we face as human beings. We crave stability, predictability, and comfort. Yet the God who created us often moves through seasons of change to bring us closer to His purpose. Change is not punishment, it is preparation. There are moments in life when it feels like everything familiar is slipping away. A relationship ends, a job is lost, a dream fades, and in that silence, we start to wonder, God, where are you in all this? But what if, in those very moments, God is doing His deepest work? What if the loss you feel is actually the pruning that leads to new growth? In John 15, Jesus says, "Every branch that bears fruit, He prunes, that it may bear more fruit." Pruning is painful. It feels like being cut back, reduced, and stripped. But in God's hands, pruning is never destruction. It is refinement. Think about the butterfly. Before it can fly, it must struggle through the cocoon. If you cut it open early to save it from the fight, its wings will never be strong enough to soar. In the same way, God allows seasons of pressure because they produce strength, endurance, and dependence on Him. From a psychological standpoint, we resist change because it threatens our sense of identity and security. The human brain prefers patterns. It wants the familiar, even when the familiar hurts us. That is why people stay in toxic relationships, unfulfilling jobs, or unhealthy routines, because predictability feels safer than the unknown. But faith invites us to step beyond what we can control, to trust a God who sees the whole path when we can only see the next step. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." This isn't just a nice verse to memorize. It is a radical call to surrender. When we lean on our own understanding, we limit God to what makes sense in our minds. But when we trust Him fully, we open the door for the miraculous. We allow Him to guide us into places we never imagined we'd go. Abraham experienced this firsthand. God told him, "Leave your country and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." God didn't hand him a map. He gave him a command. Abraham obeyed, and his obedience became the foundation of faith for generations. He didn't need to see the whole picture. He only needed to trust the one who held it. And that's what embracing change really is. It's saying, "God, I don't understand this, but I trust you." It's choosing faith over fear and obedience over comfort. Many of us pray for God to use us, to elevate us, to bless us. But we forget that before every elevation, there is separation. Before God promotes you, He often isolates you. Before He gives you a new assignment, He will strip away what no longer fits your future. Look at Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. From the outside, it looked like his life was falling apart. But in reality, every painful chapter was part of a divine setup. God was positioning Joseph to save nations. In Genesis 52:20, Joseph says, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." That's what embracing change looks like. Trusting that even in the darkest moments, God is still working for your good. Psychologically, this perspective transforms pain into purpose. When we reframe suffering as a season of preparation, our mind begins to align with hope instead of despair. Neuroscience even shows that gratitude and faith literally rewire the brain to handle stress and uncertainty more resiliently. Change challenges our ego. Pride wants control. Fear wants guarantees. But faith invites surrender. Sometimes God has to let our plans fail so that his plans can prevail. Think of Moses. Raised in Pharaoh's palace, he thought he knew his purpose. But when he acted in anger and killed an Egyptian, everything changed. He fled into the wilderness for 40 years. To Moses, it looked like failure. To God, it was formation. The wilderness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. That's what change often is. Preparation in disguise. The wilderness seasons teach us humility, dependence, and patience. They strip away false identities and rebuild us on the foundation of who God says we are. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" God doesn't ask if we like the new thing. He asks if we can perceive it. Because newness often arrives disguised as loss. Sometimes God removes what we think we need to make room for what he knows we need. The friendship that fades, the job that ends, the opportunity that vanishes. It's all part of the transition from one season to another. If we cling to what's dying, we miss what's being born. Change is also God's way of keeping us dependent on him. If life stayed predictable, we would forget our need for his guidance. But when the ground beneath us shakes, our faith roots deepen. We learn to stand on the rock that never moves. Romans 8:28 assures us all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Notice it says all things, not just the pleasant ones. The heartbreak, the confusion, the waiting, the detours, all of it is woven into God's greater design. And maybe that's the hardest part of faith, believing that even the pain has purpose. But when you look back, years later, you'll see that the very things you begged God to change were the things that changed you. If you're in a season of uncertainty, hold on to this truth. God never wastes a moment. Not one tear, not one trial, not one sleepless night goes unnoticed. The same hands that hung the stars are guiding your steps. So what can we do in seasons of change? First, pause and pray. Ask God, what are you teaching me right now? Second, practice gratitude. Even in confusion, thank him for his presence. Third, keep moving. Faith isn't passive, it's active trust. Keep walking, even when you can't see where the road leads. Spiritually, embracing change is about learning to rest in God's sovereignty. It's trusting that the author of your story knows how to finish it. It's realizing that when you feel lost, you're not off track, you're being redirected. Every great story in Scripture involves change. Noah had to build before it rained. David had to run before he reigned. Ruth had to leave her homeland before she met Boaz. Peter had to fail before he could lead. Even Jesus embraced the greatest change of all, leaving heaven, taking on flesh, and surrendering to the cross. And that's the ultimate message. Change leads to transformation. The cross looked like defeat, but it became victory. The tomb looked like the end, but it became the doorway to resurrection. If you're afraid of what's changing, remember this: the God who was faithful yesterday will be faithful tomorrow. What you lose in one season, he can restore in the next. So today, let go of fear. Stop fighting the process. The same God who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Embrace the change. It's not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your next chapter. When you stop resisting and start trusting, peace returns, joy returns, clarity returns. Because change is not something to survive, it's something to surrender to. God's plan for your life isn't falling apart, it's falling into place.